Looking around to see the people here. Nice to see you all. Glad to be together. So I prepared a talk today called Healing Emotions. Healing Emotions. Something about how when emotions are difficult, we can heal them, and how emotions themselves are a place of healing, opportunity for healing. You know, the Four Noble Truths say that there's suffering. Suffering we're talking about in a Buddhist context is the suffering caused by wanting things to be other than how they are. That suffering can be ended, and the way to end suffering is by practicing the Eightfold Path, which is essentially ethical living and meditation whose intention is to end suffering. So, it seems hard to understand suffering without thinking it has something to do with emotions. So I would say that emotions are absolutely fundamental to what Buddhism is about. Healing the ones that are difficult. And you know, the Four Noble Truths is kind of framed as this project for a person to end suffering within their own stream of consciousness, the end of suffering being known as nirvana. Sounds nice. In the Mahayana traditions, which we are focused on here, Zen is a Mahayana tradition, the emphasis is on collective liberation. So, ending suffering for everyone and everything forever. It's just a modest project that I think each one of us should intend to fulfill before the end of this lifetime. You know, there are great advantages to this. You know, you really have to have a lot of hubris to think, I'm just going to figure it all out and fix it. And that's how we'll end it. And figuring it out and all, fixing it is really not the method that we're being invited into, nor is it in large way probably the best method for healing emotions, nor the way that emotions are healing. So in the Yogacara tradition, which is a Mahayana tradition, which I use quite a bit when teaching this kind of material, we have what we call two barriers, the barrier of afflictive emotion and the barrier of delusion. So in a certain sense, actually, from a Buddhist perspective, ending suffering is not just about ending afflictive emotion, it's about ending delusion. The delusion that we're separate, in the most simple expression of it. So, you know, we say there are three root conditions for suffering, or three poisons: desire, aversion, and delusion. Desire and aversion are emotional in tone. Delusion is cognitive or perceptual. So here we're focusing. We say the barrier of afflictive emotion is the barrier of being caught by emotions that are painful and cause us to do harmful things and suffer more. And the barrier of delusion is kind of a separate issue. So I'm focusing on the afflictive emotion side today. We'll figure out delusion, you know, tomorrow or something. Also, for those of you who really like to be knowledgeable about Buddhism, you know, really what we're talking about is the fourth aggregate. So the five aggregates are form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness. So emotions are formation. That's what formation refers to, in case you're trying to keep track of all this stuff. If you're not, you could just ignore that part. That'd probably be fun. Now, technically, yeah, not all afflictions are emotional. So you have delusion is an emotion, and some things seem, you know, wrong view is commonly listed as an affliction in Buddhist texts. That's clearly not an emotion. So, if we really delved into the Abhidharma, which is a lot of fun, we could parse like how this isn't exactly emotions in all cases. But for the purpose of this talk, I think I'm in pretty good shape using this term. Now, an important thing to note when it comes to healing emotions is that within the Buddhist teachings, an unpleasant sensation or a difficult experience is not necessarily an affliction. So afflictions are things which are conducive to further suffering. So, like there's some Buddhist sutras where the Buddha is quite specific, like if you have to choose to do something that is unpleasant to do, but it will be conducive to non-suffering, then you should do it. So this is not a tradition that's about just like feeling good when you want to. It's definitely not a tradition that is about immediate gratification. Sometimes going towards a difficult emotion can be a beneficial thing. And of course, that can be hard to determine. But if that sounds too abstract, I mean, how many people really feel like you've had profound growth experiences that didn't involve suffering? It's pretty rare in my experience. And in fact, most of my periods of most profound transformation and growth from patterns of harm involved immense suffering. So, and I'm really glad I did them. I'm really glad I did them. So I have a little poem from the Therigatha, which is the earliest body of women's literature ever recorded, which is contained in the Pali Canon, the earliest layer of Buddhist literature. And this poem it's kind of illustrating my last point. It's by a woman named Dhamma, which just means Dharma. Her name is Dharma. I wandered for alms, so she's begging for food, as all the nuns and monks did at this time, and some still do. I wandered for alms, I leaned on a stick, my whole body was weak and trembled. Suddenly I fell down and could clearly see the misery of this body. My heart was freed. So this is an account of a very old woman who's been a nun for a long time. She says, I wandered for alms, I leaned on a stick, my whole body was weak and trembled. Suddenly I fell down and could see clearly the misery of this body. My heart was freed. They might think, well, geez, could we have a poem about, like, you know, leaves turning and, you know, the sky being very blue? But here, did you notice that her heart was freed? This is you know, in the early Buddhist literature, they use little formulas. She's just saying, I am done suffering forever. Now, I'm not sure that really happens or not. In the early Buddhist literature, they're very explicit that they're saying, yes, that is what happened. But regardless, she's saying total freedom. Where did it happen? In recognizing the pain and anguish of falling down as an old, infirm woman, which is really scary. You know, I know many people who've fallen down and had, you know, it's been really, really hard. But it was getting really close to that experience and being intimate with it as part of her practice that enabled her to see, oh, there's a radical freedom here from adding any suffering to this experience. This kind of makes me think of something we say in the addiction recovery circles that I hang out in. We say, oh, I have another effing opportunity for growth. So, you know, one of the basic mechanisms for understanding how afflictive emotions arise in Buddhism is that we have previous conditioning. So seeds have been planted for that afflictive emotion. And when certain conditions arise, that seed will bear fruit. So for example, at some time in your life, or at some time in human life, someone was angry. That planted a seed of anger. And when conditions arise that you have certain particular cognitive constructions, like that person is a doo-doo head, and then you have to have the objective support, which is the person you think is a doo-doo head. And then you have the latent condition, which is that seed that was planted, and then a fruit will come up. And then you're angry. And it turns out, you're right, the person is a doo-doo head. Not necessarily. So every time there is an emotional action, which means an emotional experience that is not seen with clear mindfulness, it plants a seed that will produce a similar emotion later in the right conditions. We don't know when or where that will happen. So this is quite explicit in the teachings. So this is, this is just a completely different worldview than Western materialist worldview, just so you know. That's, Buddhism is like that. But the point being, every moment, if there's an emotion, you're planting seeds for that emotion to be created, and the emotion you're experiencing is the result of previous conditions. And this is, I don't know, to me, this doesn't seem that complicated. Like if you hang out with a bunch of people who are really joyful and energetic, oftentimes it kind of bleeds into you, right? If in your family there's a lot of people with a lot of depression and anxiety, oftentimes there's a lot of depression and anxiety. Also, sometimes people are like, everyone in my family is joyful and well-adjusted, and I have all these emotional problems. Karma is very helpful for explaining this because it's like, yes, the conditions that are producing our experience are vast beyond comprehension. We have thousands and thousands, if not millions of years of seeds that have been planted, and you never know when something is going to manifest. One of the advantages of this kind of view of emotions is that it helps us to detach a little bit from what we think is the absolute objective reason for our emotion that's in, like right now, the doo-doo head in this case. And it's kind of like, oh, there's an emotion here. A lot of the reasons that it's here have nothing to do with what's happening right now. That's always true, according to this theory. It's very freeing because it helps to be like, oh, now I can take care of this. I have an opportunity for healing with this emotion itself. So one of the most important things that's given to us in the Buddhist tradition to work with this is a line from the Buddha who says, karma once accumulated will not be exhausted until it is directly experienced. Karma once accumulated will not be exhausted until it's directly experienced. So if an emotion arises, if we don't actually see it, it tends to just unconsciously reproduce itself, right? So if you just have someone in your family or you tend to be kind of angry, you're never really talking about how you're angry, you're just ranting about other people. And you can just see how it's like this pattern of anger recurs, right? This is not like a strange theory. It's pretty straightforward in a lot of ways. But this is like, remember, the Four Noble Truths is like you can end suffering. This is the good news. If it is directly experienced, it can be exhausted. So if you can directly see the emotion as it arises, that pattern of whatever that difficult emotion, whether it's anxiety or depression or anger, rage, can be, it's like it bears fruit and then it doesn't plant another seed. So we have this idea that there's a lot of latent seeds. We don't know what they are because there's all this infinite conditioning. In the Dhammapada, it says, just as a tree, though cut down, if its roots remain uncut and firm, will spring up again and again. So the emotion that is not rooted out will continue to be reborn. Audre Lorde wrote, the quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives has a direct bearing on the product which we live and the changes we hope to bring about through our lives. So the quality of light by which we look at each other, she's not a Buddhist, she's just really smart. The quality of light that we use to look at our experience really matters. So this has to do with this idea of direct seeing. So scrutinize is actually a word I wouldn't use, but what we're going to be moving towards here is the idea that when an emotion arises, what we want to do is remove our attention from the cognitions about what's causing it, which is where we usually are absorbed. I'm usually thinking, you're a doo-doo head. I'm not thinking I'm angry, right? I'm usually thinking, oh my God, something horrible is going to happen. I'm like, wow, this is what anxiety feels like. So the practice here is to shift from the cognitive thing and come to just the emotional experience itself. Wordless quality of experience that is emotional. And then it's the quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives. You don't actually have to have like a super magical, compassionate self to go look at it with. If you can just turn your attention to it without trying to mess with it, that's already compassionate. It's already a willingness to be radically present with the emotion that it's here. And you get a much more direct seeing. It's uncolored. So this is process in like the direct experience of it is not, it may not feel like you're engaging in engineering or math. It's kind of mysterious. Emotions are pretty amorphous. If you don't already know this, I'm encouraging you to really check it out. Because if you, like, I'm going to be mindful of my emotions, you know, it's like, where are they? I mean, there are people out there who are teaching is like every emotion has a direct correspondent in the body. Now, I will talk in a minute about the importance of the body as the ground of this mindfulness, because the first foundation of mindfulness is the body. Second is feeling. But I don't believe that someone who doesn't have bodily sensations, who's like numb, can't have emotions. And the idea that there has to be an experienced emotional state for there to be an emotion is incoherent. But that was too philosophical. Let me just do something. I was supposed to be talking about the mystery here. The mystery of emotions. This is from a new book called An Anthology of Poetry by Buddhist Nuns of Late Imperial China. In my notes, for books, I use acronyms. So this is APBNLIC. I left out some of them. Anyway, this is a new book by Beata Grant. So any of my fellow huge fans of Daughters of Emptiness, of which we've had a couple study groups. New book, loaded with gems. This poem, I'm not going to talk about it a lot, except to say it talks about emotions. It talks about being close to them. It talks about, it's a little bit murky and mysterious how this all works. And that's fine. Writing My Feelings. This is by Wu Wu, who's I think a 16th century nun, Chinese nun. Wu Wu. Writing of my feelings. Verdant hills peek through my curtains. All day I've kept to my secluded room. Sorrows linger as sweet grasses spring up. I come to a quiet realization as Paulownia blossoms fall. Spider webs cover the toilette mirror. Magpie nests fill the courtyard trees. Dreams depart regardless of the sorrow. And the detached heart leaves no rancor. As I sit meditating alone facing the wall, I can hear the sounds of drizzling rain. When will I experience an awakening? Heavenly flowers fall with a smile. So there's kind of methods in Buddhism for how to be with healing emotions, see emotions as healing. First, I think what I was talking about in the beginning part here was to see emotions as a ground of healing. So when there's an emotion, it's an opportunity for healing. It can be healing you. But when it comes to methods, we're focused more on like how to heal emotions. So yeah, are the emotions healing or are we healing emotions? Yes. Okay. So some basic methods that I'm not going to talk about today for healing emotions. Dana, giving and generosity, fundamental to Buddhist practice. If you want to be free from afflictive emotions, just give things, give your energy, give your stuff, be generous, let go, because holding on to things is a cause of suffering. If I thought anyone here was gonna like give all their possessions away after this talk, I would warn you about that, but I'm not worried, so. Okay, Donna, really good. Sheila, ethics. So this is, the basic ethics of Buddhism. We take up precepts, not lying, not killing, not stealing, not misusing sexuality, not intoxicating the mind, things like this are basic. If you want to be happy, according to Buddhist teachings, you should live in a way that's conducive to non-suffering for everyone. That will heal emotional patterns inherently. In Tibetan Buddhism and some other schools we have what we call antidotes. So it'd be like, if you have a lot of anger, you do a lot of meditation on loving kindness. Very good. So these are just some things I'm just kind of mentioning, but I'm not going to talk about much more. Because here I really want to focus on what I think is absolutely like one of the most fundamental, effective, and root practices that underlies all these other ones to some degree, which is being mindful of emotional states themselves. Now, in the structure of mindfulness teachings in Buddhism, we say we develop mindfulness of body with mindfulness of body as a foundation. So we tend to be aware of the body, and being aware of the body helps us be aware of other phenomena that are present right now. Then we start to begin awareness of feelings, and it gets very complicated at that point, but that's why I'm just saying emotions. So that's enough. That would probably be enough to keep all of us busy for quite a while. Mindfulness of body as the foundation. The body is pretty much always giving you sensations, so it's very helpful if you notice the breath. Helps you be like, oh, there's stuff happening right now. What is it? That's kind of like mindfulness. There's stuff happening right now. What is it? And then turning that what is it energy or inquiry to emotions themselves. So then, as I was saying before, the idea is to learn how to notice emotion itself. It's good to know, like, oh, when I feel shame, there's like a burning sensation across my heart. When I feel depressive, my body feels really heavy. Or when I feel overly excited, I'm kind of jittery. That's good to know. Really, really important to know. But even if you know all that, you can also notice the emotion itself. Not the thought about it, like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do anything, everything sucks. That's kind of the slothful part. Or, oh, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. That's not very helpful. So shifting, we usually notice most people are very, very caught in their cognitive part of their experience. Shifting from that cognitive part, just a great way to practice this is notice that the cognition is happening. I'm judging someone else, I'm really angry. And you go, oh, here's the breath. Those are sensations in the body. You just notice the feeling. And probably the best thing for most people at that point is to name the feeling with like a word. If it feels like a complicated feeling, like 2 words, like shamed and exhausted or something like that. But the idea isn't then to start describing it, because then we're back up here in the cognition field, right? And in my experience, for most people, it's very hard to do this for longer than a few seconds, because pretty soon you're like, where is this feeling? So if I just go, how do you feel? Oftentimes we develop mindfulness of feeling, or we just have everyone check in, you go, how do you feel? And they name their feeling. But then if we said, okay, now sit for 15 minutes and only notice your feelings, most of it would be like, what? Where is it? How is it changing? Where are the boundaries of it? True, it's very amorphous. And yet, if you just take a moment to check in, you can often just be like, oh, there's something here. And just seeing it and maybe sustaining that kind of attention for a half a second, 1 second. The emotion, the seed that is born fruit is really seen. So, like if you have a conversation, my opinion, based on this theory and my experiences, so you have a conversation with someone or you talk about something really difficult and afterwards you feel better. A lot of times that's because unconsciously in that process, as you talked about the feelings that were difficult, you had moments of mindfulness of the feeling itself. You actually faced it. That's the mechanism, one of the main mechanisms why that was healing. When you're with someone who's really compassionate and they're really holding space for you, actually what happens is your conscious realize, oh, I can do that too. They can just be with me when I'm suffering like this, and I can just be with the suffering like that. Because we learn from people. So, now you might say, but shouldn't we be out doing a lot of things to end the conditions which cause difficult emotions? Well, as you know, if you know me, yes, I really think that a whole lot. I think it a whole lot. But this talk is not about that. It is about if you are focused on feeding people who have no food access or insufficient food access, if you're working on housing people who have unequitable access to housing in our economy that is extremely inequitable, if you are focusing on dismantling patriarchy and structures where patriarchy is pervasive, you can do this practice while you do it. Because in my experience, it's really helpful because most of us get really upset. It's very painful to see people who can't get access to food, access to housing, people who are being denied access to authority because of a system that denies it. So to be able to be like, I'm looking to do this, I'm doing the work, and yet I can turn my attention from all that and just be like, oh man, I'm exhausted. I feel hopeless. Just be like, I just see that. Or I feel enraged. Wow. That emotion can be healing. What really I find isn't all that helpful is not doing anything except thinking about something in a really afflictive way. Have you ever tried that? I don't think it's very helpful. I really don't. You know, it's like if you notice your cognition, be like, am I doing something that is actually beneficial in relation to this thing I'm upset about? Should I be? Well, then, okay, let's do that. And maybe it's really not a fit. I don't have time or whatever. Well, then what about healing emotions? What about shifting my attention to where I do have a sense of agency and where I can invest some energy? I can just tell you though, from personal experience, you know, I came here because I was in terrible emotional shape. I had a lot of behavioral and mental health issues when I arrived at MZMC. And I just sat around here on these cushions and like, they're all probably still a little wet from all the crying. I cannot possibly repay the debt of gratitude I feel for the healing that came through having that space and the support to do that here. Never. And I don't want to, because I just want to live in a way that's informed by it. So I'd like to do some meditation practice that is related directly to what I've been talking about here. So it's going to be like a little guided meditation. So if you like to have a particular posture for meditation, this is a good time to do that. Generally speaking, an upright posture, stable base. Now, I've been talking about afflictive emotions, but beneficial emotions, it's not the emphasis of this talk, but when they're emotions that you think are beneficial and healing, it's a great thing to just let them pervade your experience. So just make space for them to just extend, open, and expand when there's loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, joyfulness at the success of others. Just let them bloom. It's wonderful. Wonderful. So here, let's just develop some mindfulness of body, noticing the breathing in the lower abdomen. And allowing mindfulness of breathing to help us be aware of the whole body. So either having awareness of the body or bringing awareness to the body. That is to say, if you don't feel like you're aware of the body, just bring the awareness there. If you do, then there it is. Wonderful. I'm just going to invite you to notice how you feel right now. And if it seems clear, that's good. If it seems unclear, that's fine. But if there's a distinct emotion you can name, you could just name it. Like you would say to someone, I feel like calm or irritated or bored or whatever. Just notice and name. And so I'm going to just say things, and I'm inviting you now to maintain so your body's the foundation of your mindfulness, and you just are sensitive and aware to any emotions that arise. So you're not trying to sort of have mindfulness of emotions in the same way that you might with the body, because the body gives you such distinct sensations second to second, but the emotions are a little more amorphous. They're kind of a little bit more like listening, where if you're aware of the body, but you're aware of sound, and you tend to just notice sounds when they arise. And so I'm just going to say things, and you can just hear what I say. And if you notice an emotional reaction, just notice it, and that's it. Rest awareness in the body and in the emotions. Family. Election. Autumn. If no emotions arise, that's fine. No big deal. You're seeing what's actually here for you. That's it. Death. Friends. Just kind of let the energy settle in the breath. So from that more broad awareness of the whole body, the breath and emotions, just bringing concentration a little more narrowly into the sensations of breathing in the lower abdomen. All right, and we can just open up the eyes, release the posture of meditation, adjust your posture if you'd like. So there are many methods in Buddhism to evoke emotions so that we can see them and heal them. For example, like when you do metta practice and you think about someone you don't like and direct loving phrases towards them. Many of us have experienced some aversion when we do that. It's an opportunity to really be with and directly see aversion. That our aversion in that situation is painful for us and is painful in and of itself. There are many other methods, Tonglen, all kinds of teachings that just kind of evoke difficult feelings. So there are opportunities for healing emotions to arise so that we can be healing emotions. And I put this poem by Basho on the bulletin, which says, "Along this road goes no one, autumn evening." It doesn't tell you how to feel. It doesn't tell you how to feel. But for some people, it may evoke a feeling. It's a common quality of haiku. They provide a entrance point for you to enter into a relationship with the haiku itself. Same with koans. Opportunity for recognizing relationship. And that when you have a relationship, things come up in you. Feelings. Along this road goes no one. Autumn evening. So for some people, might like, I don't know what that means. Is there a feeling that goes with? I don't know what that means. Many times when I'm teaching about poetry, people say, I don't get poetry. It sounds like there's a feeling there to me. I don't care. That's actually a feeling in Buddhism. Lack of interest is an afflictive emotion. The idea is to care about life, to care about what is happening right now. The central message of the tradition is right now you're planting seeds for what will be experienced. So this kind of practice I'm talking about there's a lot of ways to heal emotions, and I'm kind of working towards this very root one from the Buddhist teachings, which is directly seeing them. And this is actually much easier to do in your daily life than it is in meditation, I think. Because you have lots of opportunities for healing emotions to arise. So this is just in a moment where you're like, God, why did they decide to do road construction right now? Or why can't that person figure out how to put the thing in the box where I told them to? Whatever it is. Why did I make this horrible mistake and I never get anything right? You can see that the cognitive construction is happening, the mental proliferation, prapanka, and shift. Just, here's the body. What's the feeling? Name the feeling, and just with that naming, just sustain attention on the feeling itself for just as long as it makes sense before you start to be like, what even is this? And then maybe do something else. Likewise, when you're talking to people, this is really helpful. You're like, the horrible things are going to happen. I don't know what's going on. You can say, I feel anxious because my mind is creating all these thoughts about a situation. It's a more empowered position to be in. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, act and be like, there's bad things happening. I'm going to go do something that will help. That is excellent. But it's also excellent to just acknowledge the feeling verbally when you talk to people. Practice talking about it. Develop your vocabulary for it. A great deal of Buddhist teachings are an explicit and careful vocabulary for afflictive emotions. We get really good at this. Awesome. It's not quite, it's actually, I thought I was angry, but actually I'm enraged. It's really good. It's really good. So just little moments of recognition and focus during daily life, talking about this explicit with people, even in your mind, just being like, oh, wait, I'm really sad right now. I'm sad. Just name it. Now, what I want to be careful with is like zazen. Our meditation practice in the Soto Zen tradition is pretty simple. So I don't want to make it complicated. But I'll put it this way. I hear all the time people say things like, well, I was practicing zazen, and then they go, and then there are all these birds. I've never really heard the birds before. Or they come here and they practice zazen, they go outside and you say, just like walked home and I just never really looked at the lake like that before. You're just seeing what is actually here. Or hearing what is actually here. I didn't realize how tired I was until I was sitting zazen. I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Yeah. So just as we can become more aware of the field of sound through zazen, not by doing like, now I'm doing sound meditation. You don't do that. And you don't have to be like, now I'm getting really good at knowing what the wall is. We usually sit facing the wall. Like you can just open awareness to include feelings. Just like sound. They come, and just be like, oh, there it was. And in zazen, if it's very powerful, it probably is good to name it. Because sometimes we can get overwhelmed. But if it's not too much, you can just kind of let it move through and be like, oh. Just like you hear a bird, you don't have to be like, oh, that was a woodpecker. What kind of woodpecker? It's seen. It's directly seen. Directly seen right here. Healing. Healing can happen. I've seen it happen. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Some of us practice a lot. Seems pretty slow. Karmic conditions that bring us to this moment are vast beyond comprehension. And yet, what we do in every moment always matters. Always planting seeds. So doing a little less, slowing down and seeing what's here, plant some good seeds. Plant some good seeds. All right, thank you. And now we'll have some time where people can bring their voices to the room. If you'd like to make just a reflection, it's nice to make those quite short because we have a lot of people. It's nice to hear quite a few voices. If you have a question, that's welcome. And if you're going to speak, please speak with a full voice. There are many people here. There's 40, 30 people online and 50 people in here. Nick.
Again, thank you. I think this was something personally I needed to hear. I have found, especially yesterday, I went on some calls and it was for my first 2 cardiac arrests and near the midnight. And leaving the house, going back to the ambulance, it was just, it's a common idea to just kind of, we'll just bury it and we'll joke around about the call and we'll go get a sandwich or something. But it was like, instead of doing that, it's like me and my partners and everybody else that was on scene just started allowing them to feel it. And I think that was something that was very beneficial. And that is something that can be beneficial to bring to other aspects. So I just want to say thank you, and I think that was very good timing.
Thank you, Nick, and what a touching story to be sitting with you, who's just been at the end of lives for a couple of people. So it takes a lot of courage to do that. I appreciate it. And yeah, a little humor can be good too. Another effing opportunity. So, simultaneously have a laugh and remind ourselves that we are committed to facing what's here with some courage. So thank you very much. Mari.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for your talk. I'm aware sometimes when I'm in conversation with people that I'm making a really strong effort to demonstrate emotion, all sorts of emotions, so that they feel that I'm engaged and authentic and listening to them. And you've talked about this before, but when you talk today sort of about the karma of our emotions and how if we are bringing our awareness practice to our emotions, we will plant fewer seeds. And so over time, I feel like I would become more emotionally quiet. And when I'm talking with people or when I'm figuring out appropriate responses, if I've become more emotionally quiet, I don't know what they're going to think. and maybe that doesn't matter. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, what a rich question. Jeez. Seems so real, right? To me, the question is what is actually helpful? So on the one hand, it's like your actual emotion you're experiencing, what we're focusing on there is that. So like knowing what that is. And it sounds like for you, part of it is like, oh, I want to connect with these people. So there's this desire to help them feel supported, which it seems beneficial. But it is a matter of like sensitivity to the particular person. So Wende Ngyoku Nagao has this great quote, life is not a generality. You're always with a particular person. And so trying to be sensitive and over time learn, like, is it helping people for me to kind of be really demonstrative? Or can I pick up on when that seems like that will be most supportive? And when will it be more supportive to just be a little bit more neutral? Being cool and detached, I don't really recommend, but being spacious sometimes can really help. So people just feel like the sense that they can bring anything to you and you have room for it. So I just encourage you to keep kind of being curious about it, because it sounds like a great area to develop what I call skillfulness in working with people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Someone in here? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. When we were doing the exercise, my curiosity arrived because for some words, it was like these feelings, but then this was powerful words. bring like neutrality, like nothing came, big words, we're talking about death, legend, and then I was like dating. Just like, and when other words was like, oh, I have these feelings and these sensations, they come to my mind immediately. I don't know if it's even a question, but it's a curiosity. What happened?
Yeah, for those of you online, you kind of miss the physical expression, which is really helpful. It's an important part of communication. It's a downside really of Zoom, I think. A little harder to convey. But yeah, I mean, mostly I am curious. I mean, on the one hand, one thing I'll see, like if I say the word death, I might be like, if I say death and then I think a little bit. So in some Buddhist meditations of this type, then you would think about someone you really love and their death, which tends to be much more effective. You'll see that your cognitions evoke emotions, like the way you think about something. So like if we spent more time with the words, like if we spent, oh, let's all talk about the election for a half an hour, I bet there'd be feelings. So, for example, so it's just, but it mostly, I think your point is great. It is pretty interesting. And it's great to just get used to that kind of mystery. Like being like, I'm curious about this, and I could take time to just slow down and look at it. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Ben. I come from a very intentional family. Dad's a psychologist, and we were all very big advocates of therapy. And was in therapy very young and got very intentional about emotions very quick. And one of the reasons I'm here is I'm trying to stop doing that and actually feel things instead of like look at it so intensely and then translate it as if it's a very careful, easy thing for someone else to consume. You know? So thank you. Because I'm like fiercely taking notes over here, but also like I wonder if you could help me with some of the complexity of that, because like I want to be mindful, but my problem is I've been mindful in the wrong way for like 25 years.
Yeah. I think I can identify with that. Just in that having a pattern of the way my mind is working that really isn't working, and it's like very stuck. So yeah, what can I say? It seems like you recognize a place where there's an opportunity for some freedom. And just looking at you, it seems like you can acknowledge at the heart level that there's pain there, which seems good. I'm sorry, it's true. And yeah, I mean, just kind of this Zazen method is very soft. There's no analysis. So just developing the ability by sitting down on a regular basis to let things move through without messing with them, or as Kadagir would say, nothing extra. It just sounds to me like there's a lot of ideas associated with the mindfulness of emotion that you grew up with. And this might just be an opportunity to let the ideas get more floppy. And we can't make them more floppy. Your ideas, be more floppy. You're like, nah! But if you're just like, I'm just sitting here with this wall, breathing, and a bell rang. And then we all moved harmoniously together about the room for Kinhin. Emotions kind of learn to just kind of flow through a little bit more. Anyway, may your path be wondrous. And may all our paths be wondrous. I realize our paths should be wondrous doing something other than sitting at this Dharma talk. So I really appreciate the heart people brought to your inquiry here. And yeah, just your kind attention. And I will turn it over to Ardoan. Thank you all very much.